right, we are back. We are continuing our talk about Frankenstein. And one of the things that I think Shelley was definitely working on, again, I can't claim to know Mary Shelley's mind, it is dust. But one of the things that I think Shelley was definitely working on was the idea of family and community and the connections between people. Because so much of what drives the story is our need to connect with others and what happens when we fail to connect with others. So let's take a look at some of the characters who really kind of embody this sort of thing. The first of these, of course, is Captain Walton, our first character, who sort of lays it out right at the beginning, writing to his sister while he's on this boat full of sailors and people heading up to the north. He says, "I bitterly feel the want of a friend." So here's Walton going on this great heroic journey up to the North Pole, but even in the midst of this heroic journey, he still feels alone. He wants somebody that he can relate to and talk to and be friends with. And so that's sort of setting us up right at the very beginning of the story that friendship is going to be an important part of it. And it also explains why he latches onto Victor as soon as he does, because Victor shows up at the ship and reveals himself to be kind of a kindred spirit, ambitious, brilliant, full of great stories and tales. And Walton really, really wants to know more and more about Victor, and indeed proceeds to listen to Victor tell his whole story, and he sets it down for us. So with Shelley having established that at the very beginning, I think it's worthwhile to read the book and to look for where ideas of connection and friendship and family kind of fall into play. And again, Victor begins his story by talking about connections in family and friendship. He talks about how his father married his mother, Caroline. He talks about how they raised him, how he had two doting parents who basically, they denied him nothing. They raised him with as much love as they knew how, and when they brought Elizabeth into the house, they raised her with love as well. In fact, they said, "Elizabeth, you are a present for young Victor." And they were both in a really, really happy family together. Victor had a dear friend, Henry Clerval, and where Victor is very sciencey and analytical and introverted, Henry is much more about poetry and history and extroversion, and they become fast friends. It's a very important relationship throughout the whole book. So Shelley is giving this to us in the first 4 chapters of the book, is that connection is really important, and people who have these strong connections with each other are happier. They live better. They flourish better. And of course, Victor, being the protagonist, has to be the one to screw this up. When he goes to school, he's studying on his own. He leaves his family behind. He is even when he starts the experiment to create the creature, which takes almost 2 years, I think, he does this in isolation. And Shelley gives us his health declining and him just getting worse and worse and worse, to the point that when the creature wakes up and that when Victor realizes what happened, he has to basically spend weeks just rehabilitating and coming back to his own health. That's how fragile he made himself, that without these connections he couldn't stay. And it was in fact Henry who was able to revive him. With Henry, and we see this, when Henry is with him, Victor is happy. Victor talks about new and different things. He doesn't just talk about science or chemistry. He talks about so many more ideas when Henry is with him. And we see that Victor and Henry are happy together. Now, before you get any ideas, shippers, keep in mind, this is a romance era novel, right? And one of the general characteristics of the Romantic era is this big focus on emotion and emotion and passion, and sort of the reality of and the power of emotions. So when you're reading this book and you see Victor and Henry, by 21st century standards, you would be forgiven for thinking that, as soon as you turn the page, the two of them are going to run off somewhere. It's a very, what's the word I want to look for? Queer? No, not quite. It's not, though, because they're not in love with each other. Even though it looks like they were to us, to me. I read it and I went, Henry and Victor, huh? Okay, Venry. I like that name. But it's sort of just the way that romantic literature works, is that everybody has really big feelings, and their feelings are big all the time, but not necessarily in sort of a way that Victor and Henry wanted to be with each other forever as husband and husband. So I don't think Shelley was trying to set that up. Granted, she was hanging out with her boyfriend and her boyfriend's boyfriend, Percy Shelley and Lord Byron, and they were polycule maybe before polycules were a thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if Shelley would have turned into a queer writer at some point. But I don't think Victor and Henry are quite it. But nevertheless, whenever Victor is with Henry, Victor is happy. That's what it comes down to. Well, maybe Victor should have married Henry, but then Henry dies either way. When Victor is alone, he suffers. And when he leaves other people alone, they suffer. He left the creature alone. And the creature became this monstrous, murderous wretch. I talked in another video about, could Victor have rehabilitated the creature? Could Victor have fathered the creature and taught him in the ways of the world and life, and maybe made his sort of coming out to the world more palatable, better? You know, they could do the tap dance number with Puttin' on the Ritz, perhaps to a better ending. But no, Victor did not do that. And we see how this act of abandonment really sets the whole story in motion. It's what it's what kicks the creature off in his murderous rage. But when you look at Victor, nobody really abandons Victor. Everybody works for Victor. His mother dies, and in her last dying moments, she wishes that Victor and Elizabeth would get married. Henry keeps coming to Victor to try and keep him company. He comes to Ingolstadt after Victor creates the creature and Victor has a nervous breakdown. When Victor has to go to Scotland to create the bride, Henry goes with him because somebody's got to watch this knucklehead. Victor's father, when Victor is being held by the police in Ireland on suspicion of Henry's murder, I'm afraid, Victor's father comes and get him. Nobody abandons Victor. Everybody stands up for him. And he doesn't recognize what he has. And I think for Shelley, I think that Shelley is being very intentional in this, that we have to recognize the relationships that we have. We have to recognize the people who do things for us, the people who are there for us. If we don't, if we push them away the way Victor does, then we run the risk of destroying ourselves. Or if we don't have these connections at all, then we end up like the creature. Now, the creature himself, again, had no connections when he started out, when he was born, as it were. The best chance he had was with the de Lacy family. And he spends so much time listening to them and watching them. He's doing nice things for them, like chopping wood and shoveling snow. And he learns everything about the world from the de Lacy family, and he wants their love, and he wants their acceptance. And he doesn't get it. They reject him. And every time the creature tries to reach out to other people, they reject, they assault, they throw rocks or shoot him. We can understand sort of, again, what Shelley is telling us. And in this case, I don't think that Shelley is saying, be careful or you'll become like Victor, right? Victor will be you. I think Shelley is saying, be careful or you will create the creature. If we leave people out in the cold, if we turn people away, if we meet the strange or the unexpected or the unusual with anger and disdain and rejection, then we risk creating monsters. We risk creating the things that come right back around to bite us in the ass. And that is certainly true of parents, of regular parents. Even today, you treat your children badly, then they're not going to be there for you when you need them. We can talk about groups of people. We can talk about queer people and how the non-queer majority tends to kind of freak out, especially, again, 2023. Things are not looking great for us, everybody. But we keep trying to gain acceptance from this sort of straight majority, and they keep, again, it varies place to place, but there are places where they keep pushing us away. And the question becomes, well, at what point do we become the monsters that they say they are, or can we hold on to our humanity and simply stay good human beings in spite of the torture that we have received, which maybe the creature could have done. If the creature had more life experience, if the creature were older in a sense, maybe the creature could have decided that, yes, everyone's treating me badly, everyone is rejecting me, but I can still be a good person in spite of that. But the creature didn't get that. The creature didn't get that chance. So this connection between the creature and Victor, the created and the creator, it's a twisted and warped relationship. It's the only stable relationship that either of them have throughout the whole book, is the relationship between these two. And it is a relationship built on hate and anger and vengeance. Does Victor owe love to the creature? Should Victor have shown him how to live? Is the creature's rage, I don't know, is it righteous? Is it deserved? Because we can understand Victor running away from the creature as a horror of science. We kind of get that. But is the creature's anger at him At what point should the creature start to take responsibility for his actions, right? Not saying, oh, I strangled this child because he was your brother and you made me angry. But at some point, the creature has to accept the fact that he's making his own decisions and that he is responsible for them. He can't pass them off to his father just because he's mad, right? Just because, like us, at a certain age, we have to kind of stop saying, well, my parents were mean to me and that's why I'm like this. No, you're a full human being now. Yes, your parents were mean to you, and I'm terribly sorry that your parents were mean to you, but you are a full human being in your own right, and it is now your responsibility to figure out how to deal with what your parents did to you in a way that is productive and constructive and makes you into a better person. That's kind of how it works. So I think maybe with Shelley, and again, my knowledge of her is not deep. I'm not a Shelley scholar, but I know, again, she lost her mother very, very early, days after she was born. Her husband, Percy's kind of a dilettante. And this relationship she had with him and Byron and these other sort of poets is kind of weird. She's the only woman in the group. And in the introduction to the book, she talks about how she was worried that in this challenge to tell ghost stories, that she wouldn't measure up, that this story of this strange scientist wouldn't be as good as theirs. And so do we have, possibly in the act of writing this story, do we have Shelley herself feeling like an outsider, feeling like someone who doesn't quite belong? Here's these guys, and then there's her. And she's, the girlfriend of one of them. Does she feel like she doesn't belong in this group? Does she feel excluded? And does she feel like she's being left out? Unlike the creature, she doesn't murder anybody. She writes a fantastic story. So I think one of the things we can definitely say, I feel comfortable saying, that Shelley wanted to talk about in this book was how important it is that we do appreciate the connections that we have, the friends and the family that we have, and that we then, in turn, we build those connections with other people when the opportunity arises. And we recognize the harm that can come either by rejecting the people who love us or by not being available to the people who need us as well. And so by taking that lesson in, think about your own life, right? Think about the people who are important to you, who reach out to you when you need to be reached out to, or think about the people that you haven't talked to in a while. Now, why is that? Do you, in your head, do you say, well, they could have sent me email if they wanted? Yeah, true. I'm guilty of that thinking myself. And so could you. I could send email or messages to people that I haven't talked to in a while. So I think there's a lot that is very, very human about this story, in that how we need each other and how we need each other to survive and to be people. And I think if there's any lesson that we can be reasonably sure Shelley wants us to learn, it is that. As Bill and Ted said, be excellent to each other. And with that, I think that's it. We will call this video done, and I think we got maybe one more in us on Frankenstein, so I will see you next time.